You guys, I got big news. So much of what I've learned about history, I just found out, has been a lie. I'm serious. The Middle Ages never happened. Hey there, I'm Mr. Terry. I'm a high school history teacher. Welcome back to another History Teacher Reacts video. Yep, that is the premise for today's video, because I was suggested a video over on Discord, and it is titled, The Middle Ages Never Happened. This is coming from a channel called Huggbees, who seems to be covering the topic, and this was just not something I could pass up. The original video is going to be linked down below. Let's get right into it. Oh, do I have my tinfoil hat from the JFK video? All right, I'm leaving myself to vulnerability. Let's see.
The Middle Ages did not happen, is what I would say if I was Herbert Elig, a historian who proposed that the years 614 through 911 just didn't happen.
Yeah.
Try as much as you like to.
Yeah. Nothing happened. People were just on pause for 300 years.
Never forget those years. They just never happened. End of story.
To be fast
and
forward?
to be honest, I believe his theory. The years 614 through 911 probably didn't happen. I mean, were you there? Were you alive in any capacity during any of the years between 614 and 911?
No. Were you? You were?
I didn't think so. Your evidence that these years happened is all stuff that other people showed you, like history books and photographs and Wikipedia. But
there weren't any primary sources that whole period? 600 to when? The Islamic Caliphates? China?
you weren't there. And I'm mostly confident that no one alive today could say that they were there. So in terms of first-hand sources, we really have zero. But there's interviews with Elig dating back to as recently as 2012 on this theory. And I mean, he's the guy who stole $640 million in bearer bonds from Nakatomi Plaza, so of course I believe him. He's rich as hell. Now don't take my word for it. Herbert has written a handful of books on the subject, including the insightful, witty, and classically charming Das Erfundung Mittelalter de Großzeitverschwörung de Grest. I forgot that he's German. And I don't speak German, but thanks to Google Translate, I can put the book's titles in American and read it properly translated as Sama sa kati zuluia udangani fu. Fuck me, I accidentally put it to Swahili. It's not important. What does matter is Herbert wrote like 3 or 4 books on this topic, so let's talk about the topic already. Herbert labels his proclamations as the phantom time hypothesis.
By the way, if you want to hear another great one, do you know what the Colosseum was actually used for? It's not what you think it was. I'll link that at the end. That's another conspiracy video I checked out.
Swear to you is not the subtitle of the next Doctor
Strange. And it covered a flat Earth video.
Phantom time hypothesis says that about 300 years of history were completely made up thanks to a conspiracy by the Holy Roman Emperor Otto III, Pope Sylvester II, Byzantine Emperor Constantine VII, and ancient historical Grand Punch King Flexus Bigarmicus.
Okay, so I mean that time period is when the Holy Roman Empire was created. Created out of thin air of 800.
Historians usually don't include that last one because he's far too awesome to exist in our dimension's primary historical timeline. But basically what happened is those 3 or 4 big leaders with numbers in their names instead of actual names because they're robots or some shit wanted to exist in the year 1000 AD because doing so would help legitimize Otto's claim to the Holy Roman Empire throne. There's also some talks that they did this because they all giggled like schoolgirls and thinking being alive during the year 1000 would be super cool and shit that they could tell their friends. Let me tell you something though. As someone who was alive during the year 2000, I am objectively twice as cool as any of them, and existing during a millennium is overrated. Just ask anyone in my audience who's 21 or younger. They got to grow up with cool shit I didn't have as a kid, like social media and Discord, while I just had to settle for growing up with actual meaningful human connections and friendships. Now, Elig is a historian, which from this wacky Uncanny Valley WikiHow article I discovered basically means you need a master's degree or PhD in a historical field to be labeled as such. So he's not just some conspiracy theorist talking out of his ass. He's got the man who proposed the theory that we should blow up the moon was a college professor, so...
Yeah.
Either way, being a historian means you can't just make up shit about history, despite the fact that history is written by people who are bound to exaggerate and make mistakes, so there's probably shitloads of anecdotes and other things in history as we know it that never fucking happened. But the point is, Elig does propose a good handful of evidence to support his theory. Number 1, there's not much archaeological evidence tracing back to between 614 and 911. Knowing Elig's scientific genius, he probably qualifies solid archaeological evidence as things he dug up personally in his backyard after playing in the sandbox for a few hours. And
so I'm hoping this comes together. So was the idea that whatever 600, what did he say? What year 600 and 900, whatever, it just went from that year to that year. That's what he's saying. But how would this also work with other empires around the world, other civilizations around the world? Okay, that's the stuff where I'm confused, and I this guy has obviously is going to have must have some kind of rebuttal for that. You know what I mean? I'm trying to follow along with that, and if it doesn't come through, I want you guys to help me out.
And because that predictably hasn't led him to discovering any ancient artifacts, he ruled that there's a lack of evidence. But let's roll with this claim. Secondly, look at all the Roman architecture everywhere. You see those white columns? It's totally old as shit, bro, I swear.
He's saying those
that stuff's got to have been made back in like the Roman times, because it's like all Roman and architecture and stuff, and it's still around, it's still here, so it can't be that old, bro, it's bogus. Third, there was a lot of calendar fuckery going on at that time.
That is true.
Humans tried to specifically figure out just how we should count our days, since the mathematics behind space stuff is actually pretty complicated. Basically, the Gregorian calendar, which is the one that we use today, stepped into the scene in 1582. Now, there's a lot of math in this part. Math is dumb as hell, so really all you need to know is that astronomers and mathematicians had to calculate just how much time they'd have to adjust on the dates to switch from the old Julian calendar to the current day Gregorian calendar, while keeping our measurement of time still accurate. They calculated that they need to shift things around by about 13 days to get everything to line up accurately with the sun's real-world actual movement. But Elig says they fucked up, and they should have only compensated by 10 days. If you run the numbers on the time between the calendars using Elig's proposed 10-day compensation instead of the 13 that we went with, there's roughly 300 years missing from the new calendar that's unaccounted for. Hence, the Middle Ages never fucking happened.
Oh, okay, so it's a mathematical error when they converted calendars. So I knew this guy had to do something, like have something, right? He has an academic background.
Which, yeah, I mean, that's totally true. Because again, you weren't there. Were you there? No. You can't fucking refute this. You weren't there. Okay, now let's talk about why Heribert Elig is a fucking idiot.
Yeah.
See, the entire point of a calendar is to make the heavens bend to our will. It's to explain to our stupid caveman brains how the planets and stars move in a way that our no algebra understanding asses would understand. And it turns out this shit is pretty dang predictable. Scientists can nail with pinpoint precision when we'll all experience certain phenomena, such as solar eclipses.
By the way, that's been going on for thousands of years. One of the things I think that's most impressive about ancient knowledge that you see going back to like ancient Egypt, ancient China, everywhere, was astronomical understandings and how good they were at understanding solar years, eclipses, leap year. Like they had all that stuff down. Now, a lot of that was ended up, wanting to be accurate because of calendars. Calendars were so important in history because of agriculture, right? Having those farming seasons and that kind of stuff. But you have to tie your calendar to astrology, astronomy, I should say, and there you have it. So it's always one of the most impressive things I've seen. And the Maya, I said, with the Americas as well, they did that.
And there just so happened to be a major solar eclipse written about by scholars in sometime around 600 AD, which lines up perfectly with our current solar eclipse projections. If there's 300 years missing in that time period, then our entire solar model is totally wrong, and yet it's not. So Elig is wrong. And I can say that without fear, because I'm pretty sure he doesn't speak English, so he'll have no way of knowing that I'm calling him a moron.
Take that, Germany.
There's also other boring reasons why Elig is wrong, such as the calendar math actually does work out and Elig got the dates confused. There's archaeological remains that are confirmed accurate and consistent. There's plenty of ways to historically date things that are accurate, despite how much of a pissy pants Elig wants to be about them not working. But my favorite counter argument, and one probably all of you out there watching have figured out by just putting the pieces together, is, well, it's just the simple question of, Well, I don't know. What about the entire rest of the fucking world?
That's what I thought. So that's what I thought. I thought that would be way too simple of a thing to refute. And I was hoping for he would say something like no one else thought, like, had events between those supposed times. Like everyone else is wrong. This is like, okay, we talk about Eurocentrism in history. This seems like the peak of what Eurocentrism could ever be. Like, I can't think of something more Eurocentric than just claiming for the whole world that because of some stuff some Europeans did, it voids the entire existence of the rest of the world. Like, what could possibly top that level of Eurocentrism?
914 to 911 never existed. That means everything that happened during those years could not have happened. Most of the history of Anglo-Saxon England, most of the Byzantine Empire's history, the entire life of Muhammad and the Islamic conquests of the era, and let's not forget the entire Tang Dynasty of China. So
Tang
what's
Dynasty.
more likely? None of these earth-shaping events ever happened, or some German historian got his math wrong. Now, personally, I'm still siding with Dr. Ealing because, once again, you weren't there. I wasn't there. We cannot personally refute his assertions.
Those are the worst arguments. Have you ever seen people say that? They'll say it like scientific history or just history in general. It's like, you weren't there. Well, no crap. It doesn't mean you can make up stuff and that it's valid. Evidence still is important. We take everything, everything is falsifiable, but like there's people that will say that, like, since you weren't there, that means any hypothesis that you might have is valid. No, that's not how it works.
Because he was there. And that's how he knows. He mentioned that they relied too much on written sources, but he wrote books on this phenomenon because he was there. He wrote them from the first person
he probably sold some
perspective.
interesting books.
After all, he was born in 1947. Okay, never mind. He's a fucking moron.
I love me some good historical conspiracies because, like I just said a minute ago, I'm all about like re-examining what we know about history, because history is dependent on the evidence, just like science is. And if new evidence comes and challenges our notions, then we get closer and closer to a truth rather than just building upon conjecture, right? And whatever. But yes, it doesn't make everything valid. So if anyone else or anyone else knows more about what this guy was trying to say, this original historian, and like what his arguments were, if he did have more arguments, let me know down in the comments. I'm interested in knowing that stuff. By the way, let me know if you guys want me to cover more like historical conspiracies. It's not as much that I feel like in this video I didn't really add like my historical knowledge or teaching experience, but like, do you enjoy exploring this stuff with me? I'm down with it. Again, I'll link around here, around my head here. The one where it was like, what was the real purpose of the Colosseum? Flat Earth stuff. I covered a flat Earth one, and that was interesting because that brought out some flat earthers into the comments, because it seems like anytime somebody covers that, the believers of these conspiracies, they jump on it, and it's always interesting. And then you guys, if you want to dialogue with them and go for it. But anyway, yeah, I'll do that. I'll link that right now as the video is closing up. Give me some suggestions, put them especially over in the Discord server, and we'll see y'all next time. Bye.